Jean-Louis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so let's try to do the same thing we did yesterday, and then if I manage to do this fast enough, and then we can open it up for comments. So I've got 5 talking points, basically like yesterday. Let's keep it to 5, like 5-year plans, etc. And we'll post this, okay, as we did yesterday. So the first thing has to do with basically from yesterday, the severe economic impacts of climate change. The estimates are absolutely huge, for the Asia Pacific region. I mean, you always have to take these estimates, and believe me, I'm an economist, right? So economists live with standard errors, confidence intervals, and the confidence intervals on these estimates are huge. But when you're talking about 17% of GDP by 2070, just caused by rising sea levels, and 3 trillion, whatever the size of the confidence intervals, that's going to be a really big number. Okay, yeah. If anyone, by the way, gives you like a statistic on there will be such a loss and they don't give you a confidence interval, don't believe them. Okay, if they don't have confidence intervals, this was not done properly. The saying about they say there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there's statistics. Okay, so the important thing is that you, who was that? That was it was. I'll find it for the next time I have a mic. So also what we saw is still in the first point that countries like such as Bangladesh, the sort of proportionally speaking, that the consequences they're facing are even worse. And so I think the GDN team has now decided that they enjoy alliterations. So don't call this a tempest in a teacup, but call it a full-blown hurricane. Some of my team is really getting very pithy here. So I'm sorry, this is not me. Okay, so don't blame me. But it's actually quite good. Either we adapt or we'll be left counting coins underwater. It's not bad. Okay, so that's the first point: severe economic impacts of climate change and the measurement thereof. Second thing is that adaptation requires integrated and various types of strategic approaches. This one, let me be pithy. I would call it the Edith Piaf point. Edith Piaf in the sense of non, je ne regrette rien. Most of you probably, even if you don't speak French, you know that song. And that means that when you're dealing with adaptation, you need robust assessments and communication also to populations of risks. You have to integrate this stuff into national policies. And this was the term, this is why it made me think of Edith Piaf. Edith Piaf, you have to adopt no regret strategies. You also need to reassess stuff continuously. The world is a complicated place and it's continuously changing. And there are tools that were talked about yesterday, such as contingent disaster financing and various types of multi-hazard risk assessments, which were also highlighted as being critical to recovery efforts. Now, just one point here. So again, I have to wear my hat as an economist, as a development economist. People, when people talk about in insurance, and when people talk about, I'll come back to this in a second, talk about insurance and talk about credit, these things come together. So there's this very famous paper by 2 very good development economists from the mid-'80s, Mukesh Eswaran and Ashok Kotwal. I think it's an AER piece of like from 1985 or 86, and it's called Credit as Insurance. Because the two, quite often, like mathematically, when you model them, they're the same. The one difference with the climate literature is that you don't have a limited liability constraint. Okay, so at the systemic level, it's unlimited liability, and Joe Stiglitz actually worked on this too in the 1980s. The third point is water security, or as I like to put it, it's just add water ain't going to work anymore. So we had estimates of 55% of the population, again in the Pacific, basically that's the percentage of people who have access to basic drinking water, and 90% of disaster victims face water-related crises. I mean, that's not unique to the Pacific, right? But those are numbers. What are the solutions? This comes back to something we were talking about yesterday. So, local solutions. I'll come back to that in point 4, and those are participatory planning, community governance, and a hefty dose of infrastructure investment. Again, there you need the tools and the financing to engage in the infrastructure investment. 4th point, local. So locally led forms of adaptation. And actually, when I look back on what was said yesterday in terms of the localization, these neologisms sometimes of localization, I have trouble. It's sometimes not proper English, but we know what we're talking about at least. In some sense, this point sounds like GDN's philosophy, right? Local research for better lives, right? That's our jingle, basically. So this is something that it was interesting to see this, and we didn't plan it that way. That's just the way it came out, so you need home cooking, right? This cannot be restaurant. This is not a menu. You need home cooking to be able to do this. And we came back to another point that we looked at on day 1, which is the indigenous knowledge and the importance of indigenous knowledge in crafting or in co-crafting within communities. Strategies that work. And this was sort of melded in with issues of parametric insurance, and there's this really cool example of ecotourism ventures in Fiji and Palau, which again come back to something I was talking about yesterday. CDD, community-driven development. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose, right? So people are continuously reinventing the wheel. It's like Molière's bourgeois gentilhomme who didn't know that he was speaking in prose. But local. That's in some sense. Local should be our holy trinity in terms of finding solutions. 5th point, collaboration for monitoring and financing. Now, the monitoring thing, again, as an economist and as a certified geek, there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people who collect stamps. People like me, we collect data. You never have enough data. You want to have data, you want to hold it, caress it, feed it, a baby bottle, etc. Data are that's water for life. And this is a point. Collecting data is one of the investments that you can make which has the highest return in just about any field. Okay? But the key thing when you're collecting data, this is when I was reading, when I was sort of thinking about what we were talking about yesterday. What's key about data collection, something that wasn't brought up yesterday, let me just put it out there in front of you, it's continuity. Continuity, if you have gaps, okay, you know that probably it continued to trend in the same direction. But when you have things which are going up and down, and what's important to know is if it's in the short run going up and down, and you don't have continuity, you're not going to be able to monitor that. Okay? And this involves things which may seem very esoteric, such as supporting the statistical systems of countries in the global south. So a story I always like to tell is, for years, it was SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, supported the statistical. People like me can tell horror stories, upon horror story upon horror story. And anyway, the Swedes were supporting the statistical office in Namibia, and it was not a massive investment, right? It was I don't know, 200 grand a year for Namibia to have a properly functioning statistical system. And they did this for like 15 years. And there was long-run collaboration between the Swedish Statistical Agency and people, personal relationships, and it was working beautifully. Then there was a change in government, got cut, and from one day to the next, this is what happens. Shocks often have this effect, right? Temporary shocks. Here's another way of putting it, and this is true of data. Here's a general rule: temporary shocks quite often have permanent impacts. So when a kid gets hit by a temporary shock because a household head is out of work, the household pulls them out of school. There's a non-zero probability they'll never go back to school. Right? So temporary, and that's something that you have to be able to pick up in the data. The point is that in some sense, this is part of this is also it's a group project because a lot of data collection doesn't have to be expensive. And you can also mobilize local communities to collect data in a systematic fashion. Okay? And that also leads to buy-in, and buy-in is something which is extremely important. That's one of the best reasons to have things which are local. So in summary, so I had 5 points here from yesterday: severe economic impacts of climate change. Those are the estimates. Adaptation, which requires integrated and strategic approaches. That was the Edith Piaf effect. Water security, so just add water is no longer sufficient. Local, the holy trinity of locality, and collaborative frameworks for monitoring and financing. Another sort of general point that we've heard on both days is, if we don't embrace the challenge, we're in, to put it in scientific terms, we're in deep doggy-doo. Let's put it that way. Back to you.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. Thank you. So we have 10 minutes. Does anyone want to share the highlights from yesterday with the rest of the group? Questions, thoughts, reflections? What was the most interesting bit of yesterday for you? Anyone? Oh, yeah, sorry. Please.
Hi, for me, yesterday was listening to the 3 proposals. One from Ghana, I think it was
Uganda.
and
Yeah.
I was really impressed. You can see so much work was put into these projects, and I'm really hoping that everybody can be awarded, because I think all the projects were absolutely amazing, and they are going to impact lives. So for me, that was the best part of my conference yesterday, and it was a pleasure sitting in and listening, and everybody came with their A game. They knew their proposal. So that was the best part of it for me yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were the finals of the Global Development Awards competition. Most innovative development project was GDN in action in this very theater. Somebody else? Regina? We'll get you a mic.
Thank you. I just wanted to reflect on the economic models. For us, we are not exposed to them. Even insightful. I do wonder if we reflect enough on what comes out of the model is reflective of what goes into the model. So coming from a water perspective, I can see, and having had lots of conversations now with David, it's really hard to put water security into the model, which is one of the reasons it doesn't come out the other side as being something important. And I'm worried that maybe we forget that when we look at the results, that what comes out is dependent upon what's gone in. Thanks.
Thank you. Models, I think the word model can be confusing, right? Is it the model? Is it like what we aspire to have, or is it what we try? How do we try to reproduce the complexity of reality? It's a good point. Please.
For me, one of the highlights for yesterday was the keynote address at the end, and I was trying to reflect why I felt it so impactful, and I think it was because there were people everywhere. It was telling a story, it was dealing with concepts, but it was putting it at the local level. And there were people everywhere. It was personal stories being shared. And that inspires me to try to communicate better. I think communication is a huge thing. And working in the field of environmental law and policy, I found it really difficult to make it interesting and attractive, and communicate the concepts in a way that people would remember and it would impact the people. So I think that was a really good keynote address. Thank you.
So thank you, Anshu, again for the keynote address. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, I'm Timema. I'm from here in the University of the South Pacific. Yesterday, I've learned a lot. 2 key points. One is SMART. SMART, we define SMART from a workshop in women and involving youth in terms of policy making. This is number one. SMART is like you set your specific goals. And that's for S, and M you measure, and A you attain, and R, make sure you have relevant points that are related to your goals. And T, timing, we are running short of time. From this workshop, I've gained more confidence in terms of correlating with international and in regional level when it comes to policy makings, and sometimes women are left aside in terms of decisions, just because of gender, 1, 2, the knowledge, and 3, it's just because women in a normal traditional family, you don't have every right to speak up. From yesterday, I believe from that session, I became one of the women who can voice out a decision, especially in any organization that we engage ourselves in. And the second session is just connected to our first session. That's where we become vulnerable. And in ability, we've learned 3 capacities. One is adaptation, and one is sustainable. Yesterday, we did have a debate, half debate, half session. I call it debate because people have their views from a political point of view. You have your views from a social point of view and economic. Social, economic, and political, we are all one. We have to take action. Yes, we come to conference, that's fine. But at the end of the day, what you take back, please take back SMART. We need action and we're running out of time. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Yes, at the back. We still have 5 minutes, so just, your things, your thoughts together and share with the group.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My experience from yesterday or what I learned, I'll take my cue from the professor from Norway. So my what I'll say is a little bit maybe out of the discussion here. Adam Smith, with his theory of invisible hand, the productivity will be efficient if resources will be mobilized easily. I take the cue from where we had our morning tea and lunch before, outside. So we were easily changed to the new venue because the resources were available. Money were already paid upfront. So by what I learned, imagine if those things can happen in rural areas, that resources can be easily moved around to solve problems easily. Yesterday, the insurance were talking about the parametric, and then I asked the lady later on, and she was telling me the meaning of you don't have to lodge a claim. They have the condition if your house or your location of your agriculture or your farm is on the pathway of the cyclone, automatically you have money. That is a very, very good thing, because as long as your house or your farm is on the cyclone path, they will give you the money, but of course, you have to pay the premium. So I am very, very, I would like us to learn more of Adam Smith and if his invisible hand may not be working when government comes in, but that's what I experienced from yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. I will give Jean-Louis a chance to respond. I just wanted to add one thought from my end. Thank you, Anshu, for making me think about 2100, because I agree, I never thought about that either. And my son, Nikhil, is also from 2015, so he'll be 85, but I never actually thought it feels so far away. And one thing that I was thinking yesterday is like 2100 also, the projection, we're still talking about GDP in 2100. So can we hope to have a better measure of how well we're doing in 2100 so we don't have to use the GDP, but doesn't include kind of natural capital and a lot of things. I'm just poking the economists here.
I just wanted to follow up on what you were saying, and tell you a story about what you're talking about. So apart from the fact there's a huge literature in economics on what in economics call it index insurance, like rainfall insurance and stuff like that. So it works in some places, it doesn't in others. So for example, it works very well in India. Ethiopia really doesn't work. Okay, so it really depends upon the local cultural context. The story I want to tell you about what you're talking about is another. It's the same sort of thing. It's from my previous life. When I say a previous life, including a previous spouse. So my former mother-in-law had land in Umbria in central Italy, right? And they grew watermelon, not watermelon, yellow melon, cantaloupe. In Italy, you have prosciutto e melone. I mean, it's a standard thing you eat it during summer. And we grew green peppers. Okay? Now, this area is near Lake Trasimeno, which is where Hannibal beat, one of the places where Hannibal beat the Romans. Beautiful, it's absolutely gorgeous, not too far from Perugia. It's an area which is subject to hail. Okay, hail, pieces of ice coming down, right? And there was one year where my former mother-in-law asked me to manage the farm, okay? The first thing I said is, we're buying hail insurance. Okay, she said, oh no, why? It's expensive. Why should we buy hail insurance? Oh, I said, we're buying hail insurance. Hail came. We got our payment. It was the only year in 30 years where her farm made a profit. And why? Because of a thing called basis risk, okay? Because where a farm is located or a house is located, the reason I'm thinking of this, and I just want to give you an example, basis risk is a big issue. It can't just be the path of the hurricane. So the meteorological station where they took the measurement for the hail was fairly close to our farm, but it wasn't that close. Okay, so we both collected the insurance premium completely legally. It isn't that we were lying, right? Okay, we were not lying. The meteorological data showed that we were in the hail zone, but we were still able to sell 85% of our crop. Okay, so insurance also, the devil is in the details. That's the point I wanted to make. And remember, buy hail insurance, it may for once let your farm make a profit.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move to the plenary. So plenary session 6. As you've seen, the conference team organized this 3 days along like 3. Sorry?
So, sorry, the big boss, namely Joao, asked me to say, remember, you'll be receiving pretty soon a feedback form on what we can do better, etc. We would sincerely appreciate it if you would send the information back